Mhm. I've been dancing all morning, trying to get my energy in the right place. Hey, everybody. Did you get to see me dancing? That's a rare treat for you because I don't dance in public. Ever since the time my family pulled me aside at a wedding and told me that they thought I was dancing to the words instead of the music. Yes,
Oh,
I don't. Hey, I
oh,
used to be a pianist, so I believe what's happening is I feel the music at a much deeper level
nice.
than regular
Yes,
people. So
yes. And I'm gonna take the win because I know if no one else has seen you dancing, it's because I have brought the dancing out of you, Allegra.
Oh,
That's
I
what it
like
is.
that. That's a great way of framing it. Yes, you brought the dance. You brought the rhythm out of me.
I
I
did.
think
I did.
Gloria Estefan sang a song about that. No, she said the rhythm was going to get me. Not the
Yeah.
rhythm was going to get out of me. But good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I see Marika. Welcome. I see Donna. Abraham person turquoise waving. Okay, I think it's supposed to look different, but thank you for waving. I'm waving back. Hope everybody's great today. We're just going to wait 2 minutes and then we're going to get started. Marika said she's not really sure what to expect, but she
Oh,
loves learning about new tools.
oh,
So,
you're in for a treat, Marika.
yes, it's going to be all sorts of fun. Now, Donna, can you just tell me for sure that we are live inside the Podcraft community? Or do I need to make any changes there? I think we should be live automatically, but if you can just confirm that for me, it would be glorious. I love it that you're not sure what to expect, but you showed up anyway. Love it. Okay, let's see here. Just waiting for Donna's confirmation. I guess I could go to Circle as well, but I don't want to start this thing happening in both places. Yes, you're live. Great. Thank you, Mariana, for answering as well. Okay, one more minute. I usually start at 4 minutes after to give people a chance to click whatever they need to click to get up in here. But we have a lot of juicy stuff to talk about. So I think we don't give them that extra minute. I vote we go ahead. Everybody agree with me? I'm just feeling your hands agreeing with me that we should go ahead. So, again, thank you everyone for being here. Today, we're talking about how to use AI tools to grow your podcast. So, for those of you who might not have seen it in the community, we did a poll a little while ago and said, hey, what do you guys want to learn about next? And the voting was hot and furious. And then the winner was AI because everybody and their mama was talking about it. So, oh, I love. Donna says she loves your sloth shirts.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, but yes, everybody and their mama was talking about AI, and we were like, okay, got you. So today, we have an amazing guest with us who is going to help demystify this for all of us. She's uniquely suited to do that. So Deirdre Tshien, who is joining us today, is the co-founder and CEO of Capsho, which is the fastest way to market and grow your podcast. She's the creator of Content Dripping, which I had to go all in on. Fascinating. Author of Honey Trap Marketing and host of the Grow My Podcast show. So, yes, she's not one of those people who just hopped into AI and podcasting because she thought it was cool. She's been in our space. She knows our pain. So,
I sure do. Yeah.
she's a serial entrepreneur, having founded and led 7 businesses across 5 industries in the last 9 years, and has navigated the entire world of entrepreneurship, experiences, emotions, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, that comes with starting, running, closing, and exiting businesses. So with her hands-on experience in successfully growing her business to 6 and 7 figures, she now helps podcasting entrepreneurs beat obscurity. I don't know, but I'm all about that. Beat obscurity, amplify their message, and build their movements. Because isn't that why we all started podcasting? Because we had a story and a movement in us that we just knew we had to get out. So everybody, please help me welcome Deirdre Tshien. Yay!
Yay. Thank you for having me. This is so much. We're going to have so much fun, Allegra. And
We
for everyone
always do.
else, please, yes, ask your questions throughout. I'm so excited about this.
Yes. So Donna's in the chat. I'm in the chat. So if you have questions, go ahead and answer them. I'll make sure we grab them and answer them later. But the main question that we know they wanted answered was, what is this whole AI thing? Is it ethical to use? Right? These are the questions. Is it ethical to use? All this good stuff. But we're going to start with, Deirdre, tell me, is there anything I should think about before I consider using AI?
Yeah, so I think, gosh, how long is a piece of string with this? So with The most important thing is that, okay, I want to start with your other comment about like ethics, because I think this can segue into that, if that's okay. Because we had to think long and hard about this being an AI powered, product ourselves, in terms of where do we believe that AI has to play a part and where do we as humans play a part. I've spoken before about my own somewhat dystopian views on AI and, what I think the future could look like, which is a little bit scary, and that's why, as much as possible, my belief is that as humans, as creators, the more that we can really control that creative process, the slower or the more that we can stave off, robots essentially taking over, or not even taking over. But for my fear is actually that, that information, that creativity actually doesn't really exist any longer, because AI has kind of, it's in a good way democratized it, but also in a bad way democratized it. Like, and I'll talk through some examples, because more and more we're seeing, and I don't quite agree with people who are creating solutions around, hey, let AI script your podcast episode and your video for you. Right? Like let AI record, like, they do the voice. So you can just create a script, feed it into the machine. You can choose like an actor's voice or something. It'll read it out and then you hit publish. So literally throughout that process, and a machine, an AI is actually, writing, reading, or whatever, and creating. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And more and more, that's what I've started terming, black hat businessing. There's like black hat marketing, which is like, unethical or somewhat underhanded ways to market. It's kind of like black hat businessing in my mind is kind of an extension of that, which is, is unethically, in my mind, personally unethically creating content and products as well. When we talk about, all of this, there was this proliferation of these children's books getting created by AI, and people selling them. And it is unethical because, again, people who like the softwares that actually generate images are leveraging actual art, like actual creators' images, to create that. And so that does become this, it's a very, very gray line. And as much as possible that we don't cross that line, that is how we essentially hold on to our humanity, right? So the reason why I kind of wanted to start there, and I know that we can go a little bit more into this as well, Allegra, like for later on, but the reason why I want to start there is because your question was how, what do we have to consider, or what do we have to do before we use AI? And I think that is a big part of what we need to consider, which is everything from the start to finish is, where do you as the human, as the creator, where can you differentiate yourself, and where is it smart to use AI and not so smart to use AI? So what do we have to do before we consider using AI? There's a lot of things. One, let's work out where we want to be using AI. But two is, fundamentally, we need to have our foundations down as a creator. So what does that mean and look like? That means we have to know specifically who it is that we're speaking to, who it is that we're creating content for. And I know this sounds really cliched, and you've probably heard 100 million courses and trainings on, you've got to, focus on your niche, and you've got to focus on your target audience. And there's a reason why it's cliched and everyone talks about it, is because it's so true. I've been through this myself multiple times where, the last 3 podcasts that I launched, I pod faded because I had no idea. At the end of the day, I had no idea who I was actually speaking to. So that's the first thing. And, even in my own, like if we talk about Capsho, and so I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I want to talk about this, stories and my own experiences with, in the themes that I'm trying to get across. But when I launched Capsho, it was the first iteration was at the end of 2021. And how that came about was at the time I had a coaching business. I was helping e-commerce business owners with their digital marketing. And, a lot of times why people go into e-commerce sometimes, or product-based business, is because they don't want to have to be the face of it. They don't want to have to tell their stories. It's all about the product. And my message to them was, well, when you're starting, like anyone can sell any widget or any, like you just go on Amazon and literally you can get anything that you want pretty much in the world, right? But what is going to set you apart is going to be you. Like you're literally the only differentiator you have in your business because there is no one else like you. There's no one else with your experiences. There's no one else with your stories, nothing. And so they were like, oh, okay, Deirdre, I understand. I get that I have to tell my stories and all of this, but I don't know how. So the first iteration of Capsho was actually was quite different actually. And it was very rudimentary. So it would help people, tell their story. So it would prompt you through, okay, now what happened here and then what happened here, and a little bit more smarter than that, but that was basically the journey. And then the software would take that and convert it into a bank of social media captions and emails. And when we created that and we launched that end of 2021, I was like, this is amazing. It's going to help all these entrepreneurs. And so you can already tell that was my niche, right? All entrepreneurs. Like, what? Anyone who's been through this will probably like, yeah, like, where do you find all entrepreneurs? Like everywhere, right? Like there's literally like that does not help at all.
Right.
Right.
It's like the unniche.
Yes, right. Exactly. Like it feels and sounds like a niche. It could be a niche, but it's really actually not. And so we struggled. We really, really struggled to get Capsho off the ground in the first few months of 2022, which was just last year. And then I was speaking to a coach and he was like, well, you know what the problem is? I was like, yeah, it's my messaging, right? It's just my hook. That's all it is. He's like, no, it's not that. You need to niche down. And I was like, oh my God, this is so painful. Anyway, so niching down is really painful. I'm not gonna lie about that or hide it. But when we did that work and we were like, okay, in the entrepreneurship space, we want to talk specifically to those who have a podcast, right? And then you think and you go, well, now where do you find people who podcast? Well, now you can go to a podfest, or you can go to a podcast movement, or you can, speak to a community like this. You can actually now on the ground find. So that's almost the test that I use now. It's like, can I actually identify, specific communities and specific places that I can go? If I can, then that is good. That's a niche, right? Whereas if you're going like all entrepreneurs, they're like, I don't know, like I could go to 10 million different things. That is not a niche. So that's kind of the starting point, is know exactly who it is that you're speaking to. And the reason why this is important, and it starts to be, and because I'm such a tangible person, so I want to take this from a concept to something tangible. And what that means and looks like is content, right? When you know who it is that you're speaking to, you then also have to know what you're speaking to them about. And it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, tick, okay, I know who I'm speaking to. And now I'm going to speak to them about everything that they might literally care about under the sun. And that is also not the way to go. So I have someone in my community, Jerry, and it's so funny. I was doing this a training on SEO actually. And I didn't call him out by name, but he actually sent me an email and he was like, I know you were speaking about me, but thank you. I needed to hear that. Because the point that I was trying to make on this training was that, at the end of the day, when we think about SEO and getting discovered, which is the end, like kind of, if, hopefully what we'll get you at the end of this particular, this live is an outcome of growing your podcast and growing your community and growing your movement, right? But in order to get there, we need to get discovered. Now, how do we get discovered? Like, yes, we can hit the ground and we can go to all of these places where our specific audience is hanging out, which is why doing step one is so important, right? Know exactly who it is you're speaking to. But step two, when we want to get discovered online, which is the most, the best way that we can create leverage, we need to actually be very, very specific about the type of content that we're speaking about. Now, the reason why is because when you think about a search engine, even, social media platforms, which are becoming a little bit more, search-based, but not as sophisticated as like a Google, the only way, it's still run by machines at the end of the day. And the only way that machines can actually know and pick up on what it is that you're an expert in is if you hammer it with that. And what I mean by this is, okay, so Jerry, in this example, he knows his specific target audience inside and out. So he talks to faith-based dads, right? And okay, great. Like you can find faith-based dads. There are specific communities online for them. There are specific communities offline for them. So great. Okay, that's a pretty good niche. But then he's like, well, what do they care about? They care about faith, obviously. They care about family. They care about finances. They care about careers. They care about fitness and health, right? They care about all these things, which literally every human kind of also cares about, right? And so, you know, when I was on this SEO training and kind of talking about his example, it was like, well, the machines can't actually pick up on the fact that he's an expert in anything because he's talking about everything. Yes, he might be talking specifically to the one person, but he's still talking about all of this different types of content. And that's the machines just actually cannot work like that. So, so he actually was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like no one has given me feedback like that before. They've always said, you know exactly who you're speaking to. You've got a niche. That's great job. But he's like, the numbers don't lie. You know, like he has not been able to see growth in his podcast because he's talking about so many, he cannot get discovered. He just cannot get discovered. So that's why step 2, which is so important off the back of step 1, like know who it is you're speaking to, but then really hone in on one specific thing that you can talk to that specific person about. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
It does. Yes.
Yeah. And so and the tangibility, like why this is so important is because it does actually start to drive how you get found, the discoverability, how you grow your podcast. I hope that point is hopefully sinking in because it's so important for us to be topic driven if we want to be able to play in this online leveraged world, and especially when we want to start using AI.
So we do have a question that just came through from Marika. How do you make sure your message isn't just reaching the choir?
As in, when you say the choir, as people who already like know you, who already just, if we could be.
Tell us a little bit more, Marika. Do you mean, how do you make sure that you're not just spreading it out? I'll catch up later. Okay, Martin, I see your note. So Marika, do you mean, how do you make sure that you're talking to this specific subset of people instead of just like blasting it to everyone? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'll pop that up when she says that. So let me tell you what I heard so far. So yes, people are saying this definitely makes sense. So before you even get to thinking about AI, you first need to know who you're talking to, like very specifically, not just a very broad, like Christian fathers, right? That's too broad, right? So know exactly who you're talking to, and then know what it is that you personally will talk to them about based on your life experiences, your expertise, your knowledge, your desire. Because going into a podcast topic just because it's a hot topic, while it might bore the pudding out of you, also not a good idea, right? That's another recipe for pod fade. Going into a hot niche with no interest in it, right? That's also not so great. But then that third piece, I think, is what you're about to talk about, which is, and then once you have that foundation, then you get to choose where you would get assistance, period. And then AI could be one of those things.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, because, and this kind of comes back to what I was, when I was kind of talking about my dystopian view of AI and how, now knowledge can, in a good and bad way, can become more and more democratized, is that this is where you still hold the power. Right? When you can still speak specifically to your target audience about the thing that you're an expert on and that they care about. So, you know this, and you create content about that. Like machines and other people, it's more than other people using the machines, is probably more what we need to care about. And what I mean by that is no one can steal your experience and your expertise and your stories, especially when it relates to your specific target audience and the thing that they care about, right? Like, so when you can hone in on that, then you have the power and you're not giving that power up to the machines or to the people using the machines. And then you can go, okay, well, how am I going to start to use AI? My fundamental, and honestly, this is why we relaunched Capsho. So we just recently launched the 2.0 version of Capsho, was because I was struggling with this whole like how, and maybe to step back and just talk about Capsho a little bit. This isn't meant to be the purpose, but I just kind of want to talk about this journey. Version 1 was very much like you put your audio file in, which is great because it's still based on your content, but then it would kind of give you the structure. It would give you it would give you, when we talk about, the show notes, for example, it would just give you the one thing, and it was kind of like, here you go, Allegra, like, good luck, off you go. Like, it would give you the one thing. But when I stepped back and I started thinking about AI and our role in this, I was like, we need to keep the control and the flexibility in the creator's hands. There are still ways that we can use AI really effectively, but fundamentally, we needed to even change the way that Capsho was and did things, and how our users interacted with Capsho, so that we could have the creator be heavily involved, not time-wise, but thought-wise, in the content that they're creating. And so and I say this as an example of how hopefully, you're thinking through how you're using AI. I actually did a podcast episode on this about when ChatGPT really, burst into the scene. And, like, you already know that I don't agree with, hey, let's use ChatGPT to create our podcast script. I'm like, right. Yeah, you can use ChatGPT as a launching pad to be like, oh, okay, well, again, for this particular audience, for this particular content pillar, I want to talk about this specific thing. What are some ideas that are in there? Or even if you're kind of having a really, like, and we all have those like mental blank block days, and it's like, okay, well, I'm speaking to this specific audience and it's going to be about this content pillar. What are some ideas even within that content pillar that I could, create a podcast episode on? And then it will just give you, a dot point of that. Like, using it for that is totally cool. But then you take that one line and you're like, oh, that's actually a really good, I hadn't even thought about that. And when you can bring your flavor, your perspective, your stories, your experience, your lessons and learnings, that's when you still retain control as a creator. And then can I talk about Capsho a little bit about how that could...
we know that you're a founder. I'm not going to throw rocks at you. Yes, you can talk about
okay, cool. I'm like, I don't want this to be a good Capsho show.
It's not a Capsho commercial, but a lot of people on here don't know what it does, so they don't know how you're implementing AI to help people move podcasters, right?
Okay. So really, if I take a step back about what Capsho is, so essentially it's a AI powered content writer, and so our users upload their audio file, and in under 10 minutes it creates their title and description, their podcast website content, social media captions, emails, blog post, LinkedIn article, YouTube description. It pulls out quotes as well, and gives a full transcript. And so basically, how we changed up 2.0 is that at each point of those assets, in each of those assets, the user, the creator, can actually, you can make it fully customizable. So as opposed to 1.0, where we just we had our template, our Capsho template. It's like, here you go, here's the one piece of content written, how we would write it, how an AI would write it. It now puts the control back into your hands. So if you're like, well, I really like to start my show notes with a quote, you can do that, right? The AI will pick out those quotes for you and give you options, but you get to choose where it is and which one you want to use. And then you might be like, and I don't even want to list out value, like the key takeaways. I don't want to do that, but another person might. Right. But you have that full control and customizability, where AI has just inside of Capsho has just really made that process more efficient and has given you more ideas, but it's still anchored in your content, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that was, so I listened to that podcast episode or blog post on ChatGPT. Yes, I've been all over everything. So I remember that. Yes. But I think the most powerful thing that I got out of that was, we're not saying that AI is good or bad, right? It's kind of like food. Food isn't good or bad. Food is food. Whatever judgment you put on it makes it good or bad, right? But it is what it is. So AI is what it is. But looking at AI as a way to put less of you into your product isn't going to serve you well. That was the most powerful thing that I read. So if you're using AI to enhance you, right? So that
Yes.
you show up more, so that it's better, faster for you to be more you. Then AI is magical. If you're using AI to replace you, why would you do that? Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because all of us started our podcast because we wanted to get out what we wanted to say.
Yes.
So I don't have the inclination to let AI create my episodes or tell me what I ought to talk about. No, but once I have decided what to talk about, if you want to help me enhance my show notes, you want to help me get all those written pieces out faster, sign me up for that. Because those are the pieces where I am alive, is when I'm on the mic talking to my guests.
Yes.
Like sitting and writing all the pieces that I know are critical for me to get discovered. Those aren't as fun to me.
Yes.
So I tend to shove them off to like Saturday afternoon when the laundry's running.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? So that's not the most effective way to grow my show. So
totally.
I thought that was the most powerful piece, that you're using AI kind of like frosting. It's not the cupcake, right? It's the frosting. You are still the cake. I should put that on a t-shirt. I am still the cake.
That is a great analogy. Yes. You are still the taste. Yeah. We're just a little bit of embellishment. The sprinkles and the frosting.
Okay, AI is the sprinkles. Yes.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's the thing. It's like, we think that AI, and we have users who have churned, right? Because they're like, well, it still requires me to do stuff. It still requires too much of my time or too much work. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And look, it's everyone for themselves. But like AI in any form, whether it's Capsho or you use something else, ChatGPT, think of it as like it's 70-80%, right? It'll get you 70-80% of the way there, but you still need to put in 20-30%, depending on our levels of how particular we might be with what we put out there. And we should be particular to at least that 20% more, right? We should be putting our own voices on there. We should be, maybe that's the sprinkle, actually. So yeah, AI is the frosting, and then you're the sprinkle and the cherry on top, like you want to make it yours still. Yes, what we do, Capsho does, is anchored in your content, but you want to make it even more of you. And that is vitally important to us and how we want creators to be creating. And the great thing about this is, AI doesn't become as scary anymore. It's actually allowing us to, one, do more, which is great. If you weren't doing blog posts before, now you can. Because why wouldn't you? It saved you so much time to do that. But in that saving of time as well, what I love about, what AI can do for us through this process is it allows us to actually be even more human. So we have way more time now to actually think about how can we serve that audience, again, going to step one, that particular person that you're trying to serve, like, how can you serve them even more, even better, go even deeper in the content that you're creating for them? And that's actually at its core, one of the most human things that we can do. And even if it's not that, even if it's just spending more time with your family or doing the picking up new hobbies or going deeper in the hobbies that you already love, like there is nothing, again, still more human than doing that. So the thing that I really love about AI and what we're bringing to the world is that it actually allows us to really stretch into even more humanness, which makes my heart sing.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but absolutely makes sense. So Abraham, I like that. Nobody can steal our expertise or experiences. I think that makes making a podcast worthwhile, despite the huge offer of absolutely. There's a ton of content out there, right? But it's not your content because it's not the way that you would present it. I love that. Nobody can steal our expertise. Even if they stole your podcast, they're not stealing your expertise or experiences.
Can't do that. Exactly.
Awesome. So can I pepper you with a question now?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't want to keep interrupting, but what are some examples of successful podcasters that you know who have used AI to grow their audience? So you don't have to give away like industry secrets or like violate any NDAs with clients, but just some type examples of things that podcasters have done using AI to grow.
Yeah, so many. Okay. So obviously I'll speak to like Capsho users because that's what I know. So we had so Adam you started using, it was so funny. He was like, yeah, so I have an email list, which is great, tick, because I know a lot of podcasters do not have an email list. So if you don't have an email list right now, start growing one. But he was like, and Capsho gave me this email subject line that I normally wouldn't use, but I thought, well, why not? Let me try it. What do I have to lose? And he saw his email open rates go from mid 20, like 20, I think he was at 23 or 25% to 66%.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Important because obviously if you have an email list, you want people to open your emails. And so even a small thing like that was just amazing. I've had, other users like Ray Sean, for example, he has got, 7x'd his podcast listen downloads from using Capsho. Yeah. And
I mean, again, sorry. I'm like, I don't want to ask you, but like, what did he do?
Yeah.
Or was it all of it? Like, did he use all of the different tools that are in there? Like, what does he think 7x'd his downloads?
So yes, I can speak specifically to that. I also had him on my podcast. So there's an episode that he spoke to that. But what the crux of it, what it came down to is because, what we do and how we design Capsho is to be very SEO driven. You'll notice if you ever use Capsho, when one of the first things that it asks you to do is to actually pick a topic. So, once Capsho's processed your episode, it will kind of stop midway and it'll be like, okay, we read through the transcript, we've listened to the audio. These are the topics that we think you spoke about. Choose one. Just choose one topic because that is what Capsho is going to create content for you on. And generally at that stage, I would also put it through an SEO, ranker just to double check. I want to go with one that is, high volume, low competition, right? From a search-based perspective. So he was doing that. And he said basically he used to spend so much time on social media, just like posting. And yes, Capsho can help you with that. But what he found was he was burning out. So he took a break from actually posting anything on social media. And that was when he actually started seeing the growth in listeners because they were finding him through search. And that is one of the most powerful ways that you can actually get discovered. And that's why I always go back to this is it's so important. Again, be audience driven, be topic driven, and put all of your content to that because that is how you get discovered. And so he basically didn't have to do very much at all because the content that he was putting out there from a written perspective that Capsho was creating for him was optimized for search. And that was how he was getting discovered. So he was able to 7x his downloads. I've been speaking really recently to another of our users, JR Sparrow. He's interesting in the sense that he actually does know his audience, but his content is quite varied. So he might be a little bit of an exception to the rule, but he basically similar. So he actually very much focused on the social media side now. So again, there is no like one path. I think that's really important for everyone to know. It's like, you've just got to find yours and find what works for you and what you want to lean in on. Ray Sean, he actually also has a full-time job. So he didn't want to be out there posting. So search is actually perfect for him. Whereas JR Sparrow, he loves he's on Twitch and he's on all of these different platforms, right? And he just loves that, that side of it. So he was started repurposing. So we don't create anything for Twitch, but he was really cleverly taking content that, from the blog post side of it, from the show notes side of it, he was like mixing and matching and he was putting it out on Twitch and all these other platforms. And from that, he grew he was showing me his graph. We're actually going to do a case study of him. He was at in the double digits and maybe hitting triple digits. He skyrocketed to over 4,000 listeners per episode since using Capsho. And he's very upfront. He's like, since using Capsho, this is what's happened.
Okay. Yeah. No, those are perfect because it's one thing to say be intentional about how you're going to choose to use AI. But then it's another one to say, okay, I want to be intentional, but like, what can I do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different things. And I don't know about everybody else, but if you have been paying attention to what podcasters are doing with it, people are doing all sorts of different stuff. So it's always helpful to hear about those things that feel more true to something I might ever consider doing that is working.
Yes.
But I think an important piece that we talked about the first time we spoke that we haven't gotten to yet is no matter how good the AI is, as Abraham said, it can't replace you. But the other piece of that is just like with any content that somebody creates for you, whether you've bought some licensed content, whether it's AI creating content for you, I would not take anything that somebody else created and just copy and paste that as if that was me. Yes. I don't know if I'm an egomaniac or what, but could you speak to a little bit? Because there was a question we got about, well, if all people start, wait, let me ask the question correctly so my bias won't show. If a lot of people start using AI to grow their podcast, won't all of our stuff start to look and sound the same?
Such a good question. And this was honestly like, I get that because that was my fear as well. And that's again, why we had to relaunch Capsho with 2.0. So, okay. So there's a couple of things, and I will get to I think the crux of what you're getting at, Allegra. But so the first thing is, when we talk about, and I get asked this question so much, it's like, what's the difference between Capsho and ChatGPT? So I just want to kind of get that out of the way. So, ChatGPT is what we call like general AI, right? So it's been trained on the universe of words and stuff, content that's out there, and that is and because of how we use it, how we prompt it, essentially you're asking it a question or you're giving it an instruction, right? So it's how do I say this? So when you ask it a relatively general question, you're going to get something relatively general back, and that generality is what starts to become the same across everyone. If everyone's asking that similar question, right, that becomes the same. Now, the difference with Capsho is that we're a specialist AI, which means that because we specialize on your content, as in we create the content off your podcast, which is you, right? So the stories that get told, the steps, the how-tos, the learnings, like what Capsho serves back to you is essentially you, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to get that out of the way in terms of the differences there. So now then, if we go, okay, with let's say you're using Capsho and it's giving you all this content that's still based on your content, I'm so at pains to say, again, it's a first draft and it gets you 70 to 80% of the way there. Because at the end of the day, it is still like, so we still leverage a language model that has been trained on, like on what's out there, but it's just specialized to your content. But what I mean with that language model is that it can still sound like AI. And that's the tone of voice, the way that we actually put our words together is so important for each and every podcaster, each and every creator, because that is actually how we connect with our audience, right? Like, so if you go back to, again, who you're speaking to, the reason why that person, that specific faith-based dad or entrepreneur who podcasts or, whatever that looks like for you, the reason why that person is listening to your podcast in the first place is because they connect with you. Right? They connect with you in multiple ways, with your story, with your experience, like all things, but they also connect with you because of your voice, your intonations, and that translates into written content as well, right? Like people are going to connect with you because of how you phrase something. Like I email a lot, and Allegra, you might be on my email list because you're a Capsho. Yeah. I email a lot, right? Like, but I have a very particular tone to my email. That's only my tone. And a lot of people actually really love getting, like some people don't and they unsubscribe, and that's fine. But a lot of people, I get a lot of feedback. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for your email because it's like, it makes them laugh or it makes them smile or it makes them, because they're connecting with the way that I've written something. AI can't do that for you. At any of those levels. And so that's why, like you have to be so involved in this, because if you fundamentally care about making that impact, about building that movement, then you need to care about how you're connecting with them. And yes, AI, I'm a big believer in having AI streamline and make this process efficient, but it cannot help you connect with your audience at the end of the day.
Love that. We have a question here. Do you think your podcast website's SEO is more important than focusing on social media? Ooh, ask that twice, Donna. That was another question. What do you think?
So personally, now everyone has their own views, but personally, I do think so. I do think it is. I'm going to be on, like, this is through my own journey, right? So in my very first business that I was 10 years ago that I opened, it was with my husband, and it was a dessert bar. It's a dessert bar in Sydney that it was actually really successful. Like, we grew that to 5 locations, all these things. Now, the reason why that became successful, what I put it down to, was a social media platform like Instagram, because Instagram was actually growing at that same time. So as Instagram was growing, we were growing with it. And that was, the first sort of foray for us into like things like influencer marketing and things like that. And we really rode that wave. And so you can tell from that for me, I was like, all through my entrepreneurship journey, I'm like, okay, great. I love social media. Like, it helped me with my first business. So I'm just always going to go in on social media. Lately, probably in the last couple of years, I've totally changed my tune on that. Social media has been the one thing that has been burning me and my team out, and it's just has not yielded results. And I say this like I'm talking generally, but this is specifically for me. I know that some people have had great results with social media. Generally, it's because they've grown with it. So if you can get in and grow the wave, and grow, like, ride that wave of growth with them. So people who've been wildly successful on TikTok, for example, and everyone's talking about TikTok now, but it's like, if it was like with my first business where we got in relatively early and, was able to, like, that works. But if you're kind of late to the game, it's really, really hard to get meaningful traction and a meaningful foothold, and even harder for a podcast, because people aren't on social media to find and discover and listen to a podcast, right? They're there to scroll and to, catch up with friends,
dream.
and exactly, like, do all these other things. Like, they're not there to listen to a podcast. So social media is great for awareness. I would never say don't be on social media. It's great for awareness, so that people are kind of like, oh, that's interesting. She has a podcast. Cool, like, file that at the end of, at the back of my brain, but and so it's great for that. But don't rely on social media to grow a podcast. It's not going to happen unless you have, again, there are caveats to that. J.R. Sparrow was able to make it happen. Again, if you have a big following on there already, definitely you can make that happen. But if you don't, it is not the place that I would start. I would 100% start with search, because people are intentionally trying to find the content that you're putting out there. And
I think
that's what it's like.
Also, you said earlier that the algorithm is not designed to help people find stuff, right? It's different. The algorithms of social are designed to get you there and then keep you on their platform, versus Google, Bing, whatever the search engines are. Their whole intent is, okay, this person is looking for something. I want to be the person who helps them find it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's like, social media is trying to get into search-based stuff as well. I'm a little bit, I think it's trying to do that. I just don't know how effectively users are picking up on that. I think on Instagram they're more and more searching for things. But I think it has a little way to go. But a similar thing, it's kind of similar, like, depending on what it is that your end result is. If you're trying to get people to listen to you, like if you're trying to grow your podcast through social media, I would say it's not the most effective way, even if it was search-based, because if people are searching, they're looking for like that quick hit, like, what's that 30-second thing that I can learn about this thing? Or, so for example, like, I've used it before to search mobility exercises. I just want, 1 or 2, like, just a really quick routine that I can do in like 30 seconds in 5 minutes of my day. And so that's what I would, so think about how you use social media, like, I don't go on there to try to find a podcast. I go on there for these like really quick, things that I can get going. So
that's interesting though. So what I also heard was, you don't go on social media to find a podcast, but also we have a lot of folks who podcast to support another endeavor. So whether that's they're
Yes.
supporting a product or a service. So also think about it
Yes.
this way. Do you think someone goes to social media to find your picture hangers, or do you think someone goes on social media to find their accountant, right? So
Totally.
whatever else you do that your
Yes.
podcast is in support of, because your podcast is a tool too, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you do that your podcast is helping with, would the person on social be looking for you there? That's a really interesting question as you're figuring out how to be intentional about where you market, period, much less how you want to use AI to help you do that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great pickup because, sorry, Martin, I'll check out. Oh, spelling is Capsho, Capsho, Capsho.
So Martin, I'm sorry if we missed your comment. I don't see that here in YouTube, and I don't see it in the circle event. So I'm sorry we missed that. We would never ignore you. So yes, please do follow up, and we will get back to that. Go ahead. Deirdre.
Yes. No, you pick, because I always say that marketing a podcast is like marketing a business, right? So it's just that your outcomes are very different. So I really like that you picked up on that, Allegra, because if your goal is to grow a podcast, I would say that social media isn't where you would start. But if your goal is to grow the business, the product, or then social media could very well be what you leverage. But if we're talking about podcast growth, and I think the question was more so about podcast growth, then I would definitely focus more on SEO than on social media.
Than IG. Yeah. So let me make sure that I grab that, because there was a lot of stuff when we started talking about the ways that AI can help you grow your podcast. So the things that I captured, because there were a bunch, I'm so glad there's a recording, was ideas, right? So it helps you put in the ingredients, and then it helps you bake the cake. You don't say, bake me a cake, and then you take that cake and put it out there. So it helps you with ideas, fleshing out ideas, or thinking about things differently. I think that is always helpful. It also saves you time, depending on how you choose to use it. And it allows you, with that extra time, to go deeper and be even more human and serve people better. So if you decide that you want to use social to market your podcast, that can take a long time, because Pinterest wants one thing, LinkedIn wants one thing, Instagram wants one thing, Facebook wants one thing, Twitter wants one thing. So picking one thing and then posting the exact same thing in all those places isn't good, right? Mm-hmm. Each channel has different wants, needs, and desires. You would hashtag the putting out of something on Instagram. You would never hashtag on Pinterest, just as an example, right? But if you're using an AI tool, so one of the things that when I first discovered Jasper, one of their things was that they had different templates that would help you write like Pinterest descriptions or help you write tweets. So if you choose to use AI to help you with your social media, it could save you a lot of time by using a tool to help you come up with the tweets for the episode that you've already created out of the juicy goodness of your own mind. And then I think that fourth thing that you said that AI helps with is it helps you connect with your audience. Mm-hmm. It helps you go deeper and connect with them in a way that no artificial intelligence can do. I love that Martin said it sounds like a neat future. I think so too, Martin. I think so too. I see another question here from Mark. I wouldn't consider TikTok as the same as other social media because it's focused on discovery. Have you had a better experience with TikTok? And I assume you mean, when you say better experience, do you mean it has helped drive or grow your podcast? Is that what you mean, Mark?
If we assume that it is about podcast growth, then I am a believer in go. Okay, so how do I answer this? So I am part of all of this. I get all of the same FOMO as everyone else, because for so long everyone's like, you got to be on TikTok. TikTok's the place to be. That's where you can get discovered and blah blah blah. And to be honest, I did fall into that. I tried. I was on TikTok, and again, we were creating content that was specifically for TikTok. So we weren't doing the whole create something for Instagram Reel and just repurpose. We were like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it with intention. To your point, Allegra, right? Like every platform is looking for their specific thing. And honestly, it's not that I wasn't gaining any traction. I think if I'd stuck with it, I probably would. I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And this is why it's so important to really know what it is that you're looking for, what result you're looking for. I just fundamentally believe that across the board, social media, including TikTok, is not really effective to grow a podcast. It's not impossible. I have been able to get, one to like handful of listeners off, places like TikTok and Instagram. So it's not impossible, like, of course. But if you're clear on the goal, like if you're like, okay, I'm going to use TikTok or Instagram or any social media platform as awareness, and you're okay with spending the time to do that, to just get awareness, 100%, like I would definitely go for it. Definitely. But if you know that, you don't have the time or the bandwidth or the mental capacity to do all of the things because awareness isn't your thing, like you want specific growth, and there's better ways to do that. I think that's the crux of it. It's like, what is the specific outcome that you're looking for? And then go all in on that. Now, if you have, again, there's always caveats. I say things generally, but there's always caveats. Like if you already have a following on TikTok, amazing. That following, because they've connected with you, they're going to want to know when you have a new podcast episode out, and they're going to want to know what it's about, and they're going to get excited to be like, yeah, I just watched this TikTok and I know that you're talking about this thing and I can't wait to hear it and I'm going to go listen to it, right? If you have an audience. Now, if you don't have an audience, yes, you might be able to get discovered, but the likelihood of someone going from a short form medium like TikTok to listen to your podcast, like an audio form as well, so it's not a visual form, it's an auditory thing, is very slim. They've got to have the intention. And that's why I say it's not impossible. You're going to get those 1, 2, 3, 5 handful of people who will go and listen to your podcast, but it's not going to be the flood that you're looking for or hoping for.
or that we all want.
Yes.
So we have about 8 minutes left. So if you have a question that you've been holding on to, please go ahead and throw it in the chat box, either in Circle or over here in YouTube, so we can make sure we get to that. But I see another question from Martin. So he's asking kind of a general question about using AI, because I think what I was saying about how you could use AI to help you create the content that's specific for each platform. He's saying that's how I want to use it. He's asking a really intriguing question though. Will your listeners appreciate the added value?
Yes, I love this topic. And this actually comes back to, I think, really great. You mentioned content dripping and, how I created this framework, which, to be fair, it's not like I created the content dripping thing and the way that I go about doing it, but it's not like anything new, really. So what the whole purpose behind content dripping and how I found this so effective was because of my own experience with it. So let me tell you about when I had my coaching business. So this was like 2 to 3 years ago. That was when I had my first podcast. And when I started that podcast, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how to edit. I think I told Colin this story actually, where I was like, I was such a newbie that if I made a mistake, I didn't know about editing tools, which he's obviously made very easy with Alitu, but I didn't know about editing tools that if I made a mistake, I would like stop the recording and then I'd record all over again and start, because I didn't know how to edit out mistakes. Like that was how much of a newbie I was. But I was like,
you're not the only person who did that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. But I was like, and I was talking to a mentor at the time, and I'm like, is this going to be worth it? Why am I? Because he was the one who told me to start podcasting, and he was like, no, like you've got to commit to it because it's fundamental. And I believe this, like now having gone through it, I 100% stand behind this. It's the best way to find your voice. And it's the best way to actually create that know, like, and trust. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Now, how do I go about doing this? How do I go about getting discovered? So and then nurturing people, because those are the two. That's why podcasting is so powerful, because it can get you discovered, it can get you leads, but it can also help nurture them. And I was reading a book by Daniel Priestley. It's called Oversubscribed, and there was like this little bit in it where he talks about the 7-hour rule, where essentially people need to spend 7 hours with you before they can know, like, and trust you enough to give you their money. And, at the time the way that I was kind of monetizing my coaching business was through challenges. So I would have a 5-day challenge, and it was such an effective way because, again, when I looked at it, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, people are spending at least 7 hours with me in that container that, and that's why it's like, it's pretty effective. It's like, okay, by the end of that, you do actually get sales. Now, I was not getting those sales to begin with, like, let me tell you, but, after a few months into having podcasted and figuring out how I can and I shared all of those things holding me back about, not giving too much value, and, don't go into the, you only want to keep it at this level. You don't want to go into that level. And, you get told all these things. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to forget all that. And I'm just going to focus on serving this audience, and serving them by just giving. Like, how do I just give as much value? Because at the end of the day, 80, 90% of people will be like, oh, that was so good what you said. But I bet even people on here, like, I don't know how many people are watching this, but I know 90% of you aren't going to do anything with anything that I've said. Like, that's just a fact, right? Like, we will be inspired when we show up to something, but like, we just do not, we don't have the time, we don't have the bandwidth, but we just don't implement the things that we've learned. And so that's why I was like, I'm just going to give everything away. And so what that looked like, and how I created Content Dripping was, it started from my podcast. So I would like create an episode.
Sorry, I think Donna's feeling attacked because she said, not Deirdre calling me out.
Sorry, Donna. It's okay. I'm right there with you. Yeah. I would release my podcast episode, and then I would have like promotional. So I would, still promote on social media just to create that awareness. But then you get that initial hike, and then that spike, of, listeners, and then it kind of dies down. So then I would release a YouTube episode on the same topic, on basically that was a repurpose of my podcast episode. And so then you'd see another spike, and then that would die down. And then the next week I would do my blog post, and then, and I would just, that started creating this content machine. And that was like the content dripping that I'm talking about. And that was always supported by social media and email, right? To actually get people to watch or listen or read. And so, and because of that, so when I launched, I tell this story all the time, but when I did my third launch for my coaching business, that was the first time, and that was probably about a good 5-6 months into having started my podcast. That was the first time that I hit 5 figures. So we did over $25,000 in that month, in that coaching business. And when I actually asked people what made them invest, I'm trying to like keep it cool. I'm like, of course you made the best decision ever, but what made you decide? And they were like, well, I've been following you. I've been listening to your podcast and, reading your blogs, and you give so much value that I felt guilty for not paying you. And that's like the best place that you can be in, when people literally feel guilty, because humans, again, it's like that we are so ingrained with this law of reciprocity, right? The more that we get, we have to give back. That's just, none of us want to be indebted. None of us want to, we don't want to feel bad about taking. So we want to give back. And so I know this is a long way of answering the question, but like, do listeners appreciate the added value? 100%. They do, 100%, because we're all human. And we all are governed by this rule of reciprocity. The more that you give to them, the more that they're going to want to give back. Now, will they do it immediately? Probably not, but it will come to roost at some point. So
love that. Love that. So it is about to be straight up on noon. If you have a question, please shoot that through now. I want to say thank you so much to Deirdre for showing up and just showering us with everything. For whatever reason, she gave us everything. She gave us everything. But no, I really appreciate that, because I think breaking it down into the bite-sized chunks, starting with the foundation. Okay, like, what are you trying to do overall? Then, okay, who are you talking to and what's your content? And then, okay, so how can AI help with that? I think it demystifies it, and it should remove fear from people who are thinking, oh my gosh, all these other people are going to have podcasts that are like all AI and I'm not. And if they do that, let them do that. Because think about it. It's kind of like the very first time I had to go speak in public. And I was at a brand conference, and one of our agencies and I were presenting on some project we'd worked on that won an award. And I was completely weirded out and feeling a little bit like an imposter, but I'd like meet people afterwards, like in the hallway, or some woman like followed me to the bathroom, like trying to stick a pitch under the stall. No lie. But it was insane. But what they said when they met me was that when they met me, I was exactly the way I was on stage, right? Like I wasn't putting anything on. And I think it's a huge compliment when somebody reaches out or responds to one of my emails and says, you sound just like, your emails sound just like you, or something like that, because I want to be authentic. And if a tool helps me do more of that within the same 24 hours that everybody else has in the day, then that's what I'm interested in. Not trying to replace myself. But if you're going to make it easier for me to show up for my people, I am into that. Yes, I really enjoyed this. Okay, let's see. It makes sense to use AI so you don't burn out. Yes. Absolutely. That is the value for value model, according to Podcasting 2.0. You're welcome, Martin. This was amazing. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Abraham, for saying that it was amazing. I'm just going to wait one more minute to see if there are any other questions. And while we're waiting for that, Deirdre, is there anything that you didn't get to? Anything you wanted to share?
I feel like I'm probably overwhelmed. Like once I get on a roll, my apologies. I get so passionate about this stuff.
They can watch it again. We'll have a recording. I'll go through and do some timestamps so people can come back and re-listen to those parts over and over again. But they'll be able to listen again. The only other thing that I thought of as I was sitting here was when you were talking about social kind of burning you up. I tend to think of, and was it Mark who said he thinks of TikTok as different? I think all of the platforms are a little bit different from one another, but I absolutely put LinkedIn in a different bucket, and I put Pinterest in a different bucket, because y'all know we just did the Pinterest challenge. It is not social, it is search, right? So I was totally picking up what you were putting down about SEO. And I'm like, yep. So I'm feeling like the Pinterest stuff I'm doing to promote my podcast is still dead on. But I also think of LinkedIn differently than the other social channels. Do you as well? It doesn't burn me out as much.
Yeah, right? I feel the same. So I've kind of, personally gone all in on LinkedIn as my one social channel, and my second Facebook, but I'm like, not on Instagram anymore. Pretty much, I'm not on TikTok anymore. Like none of that. LinkedIn is different because it's a very intentional, and there's a very intentional audience on there. So for example, and I say this all the time, but you're not like scrolling through and seeing what someone ate for breakfast, for example. Like that's just not the type of people who, right? And that's not how they use the platform.
It's interesting though. Aren't you seeing more people coming onto LinkedIn pretending like it's another platform and it's just not going well for them?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what are these people doing? You can't do the same thing in every place. But you're right. It is not the place to give an update that, oh my gosh, the cashier is taking forever. That is not a LinkedIn kind of status update.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, cool. That's great, Martin. Yeah, I'd love to listen to that.
Let me know. To y'all for hours and hours. Oh, I love that. Oh, Marika, Donna. I see this. If we want to listen to your podcast, and I'm sure she's talking to you, would you recommend we start at episode 1? Or do you feel like you changed tack and starting and going backwards would be better? Ooh, that's interesting.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'd probably start with the more recent ones. And then if you like it, like I'd love for you to go back and listen to episode 1. And you can kind of you'll be able to follow the journey. Like we talk about podcasting, of course, but also our entrepreneurship journey, etc. So you'll be able to then follow the journey. But I'd start with the most recent, see if you like where it's heading to, and then go back from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to let Deirdre go finish running her empire. Thank you so much for pouring into us and spending time. And thank all of you. Martin's like, I don't know how many people are on here. I was like, honey, neither do I. I don't pay attention to that. But thank you, everyone who showed up for us and engaged and participated. There will be a replay up. Give me an hour or so, okay? So if you go right now, it's not going to be there, but it will be. The replay will be up. If you have other questions, Deirdre's actually in the community. So if you leave a question on this event page, and if you tag her, then she'd get notified that you asked a question, and I'm sure we could convince her to come back a couple of times to see if there were any unanswered questions.
I'd love to. Yeah, okay. I'd love to. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
What is your podcast called?
I
said that earlier, but Martin might have been a little late.
Yeah, Grow My Podcast Show. Grow My Podcast Show.
You're down in Texas now. You're starting to get a little Texas twang mixed into that Australian accent. Okay, so it's Grow My Podcast Show.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, thank you, everybody. Deirdre, hang with me. Bye, everybody.
Bye.